Evan Stanley's run on Sonic the Hedgehog continues on with Trial by Fire Part 1. Now, this is our all-girls issue, which happens every once in a while. It's kind of reminiscent of back when we had the Archie comics doing Sonic Universe, a little bit to a certain degree with Treasure Team Tango, when you had Amy, Blaze, Cream, and Rouge kind of teaming up for the most part for a little bit of a story, only for a whole bunch of other characters to just come on in, and it was pandemonium, it was havoc, it was one of my most favorite story arcs of Ian Flynn's run on Sonic the Hedgehog, although I don't think that this story is doing anything really like that. It's mostly just fleshing out characters, their relationships, how the metal virus has affected Sonic's world at large, and a few other consequences of other things that have happened right before the Zeddy were finally dealt with. So let's check it out, shall we? Now we open up with Amy receiving some experimental camping gear from Tails. Now it's funny because this kind of setup feels very similar to Sonic Boom to a certain degree in a lot of the execution we see from it because of all the technical jargon that Tails puts along with most of his equipment and the fact that he's giving it to Amy to test out. But we also know that Tails likes to tinker. He's always making improvements, quote unquote, to stuff that is time tested. Like, you can't really overly improve a tent unless it just sets itself up, like capsule gear from Dragon Ball. But we also see that the reason why Sonic isn't tagging along on this adventure is because Tails actually has a video game he wants Sonic to help him out with. Basically, Tails needs a little bit of help on the co-op option, probably trying to get some trophies here and there. So Tails as game completionist confirmed? Maybe. But this is a girls' night out. However, we see that most of our girls are holding a little bit of baggage. As we find out, because of the information that our group has received, that Mimic, of course, has escaped from prison, see bad guys, Whisper doesn't feel right about staying at the Restoration HQ. While it is a good fit for Tangle, Whisper doesn't want to bring any danger in Mimic tracking her down to the Restoration. Now, of course, that's a faulty line of thinking. Mimic would definitely be after Tangle as well as Whisper, but I see this as Whisper trying to get a little bit of a jump on Mimic. She knows how to track this guy down, and of course Mimic is eventually going to come after her. So it's reasonable for her to assume that Mimic would come after her specifically instead of Tangle. Tangle did have a hand in defeating him, but he probably would see her as more of an afterthought. So we'll see how that battle goes down moving forward. It's also a good way of getting a fairly competent character out of the picture for the most part. But this ends up becoming a little bit of a hang-up that Tangle ends up dealing with. And this also ends up being a little bit of a hang-up for Jewel because Tangle isn't talking to her oldest friend. But we also see that Jewel is a little bit out of her depth because she really has taken to being the new leader of the Restoration, and she takes those responsibilities very seriously, and she had to literally be pulled away from that business. Whereas Belle has been feeling deeply melancholic about everything that she's had to experience, specifically getting kidnapped by Starline and having to come to terms with the fact that she is a creation of Dr. Eggman. And though he was going under a different name and personality at the time, that doesn't change who Eggman is currently. And this story is the continuation of Belle's almost quest to kind of find herself and accept who she is. We'll see if that actually works out by the end of this storyline, or will Belle descend further into her own despair. So Amy really has her work cut out for her. And honestly, I think this is also a notable thing of Amy's personality, as Sega has been moving forward with this direction for Amy where her relationship with Sonic is still there. It's still a part of her, but they're taking a lot more cues from the direction that they took with her in Boom, where Amy is a bit of a leader, but she is also a bit of a busybody to a fairly positive extent. But that was also a part of her character from way back when. In Sonic Adventure, she saw that Shadow was suffering and she tried to help him out. Well, that's Sonic Adventure 2, but Sonic Adventure itself, she helped out the little birdie with his whole situation. Even getting embroiled with this deadly robot that was chasing her left, right, and center. Hell, even in Sonic Heroes, despite the fact that her quest wasn't as altruistic as seen here, she was still trying to help Big and Cream in the process of trying to also get what she wanted. So this really does play true to the character of Amy that has been growing over the years, of one who is always there for people in need and always trying to help, always trying to put a positive light to the lives of people around her. And I love this kind of thing. Well done, Evan Stanley. But we also see that the campgrounds is packed. Everyone is basically trying to get away, more than likely because of the stress of the whole situation with the metal virus. Everyone wants to get out and get back to nature, because becoming a bit of a robot, yeah, it'll kind of do that to you to some degree. We also find out from the person in charge of the campgrounds that there are fire regulations put in place because when everything organic was turned to metal, a lot of the surrounding forest area missed out on its seasonal rain. So everything is dry as a bone. So there are fire regulations put in place to make sure that only you can prevent forest fires. We also see the girls struggle with a lot of Tails' equipment. It is not easy to tell what any of this stuff does. Tails probably should label his stuff a little bit more clearly and a lot less like a setup for how to build a car. And late that night, we still see that Tangle is still kind of lamenting what she could have done for Whisper. It's really consuming her mind, and she still just completely refuses to talk to Jewel about what's been going on with her. And you can constantly see it, that Jewel feels worse and worse about the fact that her oldest friend just will not talk to her. And to a certain degree, I kind of like that, because it shows that despite the colossal differences between Jewel and Tangle, Jewel still cares about her best friend. She's always been there to look out for Tangle. And it's starting to seem like they're kind of drifting away from each other at this point. Which is kind of funny, because Tangle was kind of missing out on a lot of purpose being around the restoration, because she couldn't really help out with too many things actually being there, whereas Jewel was basically in her element trying to organize everything. But in order to lighten the mood, Amy Rose has decided to pull out an old skill that has only ever truly been referenced in Sega canon back in her original appearance in Sonic CD, and that's tarot reading, which, if you know any of the lore, and as Amy explains here, was the way she actually ended up finding Sonic. And, well, that solidified her destiny moving forward. And so Amy proposes telling the ladies their destiny. And she's really playing up the theatrics. The art in this issue looks absolutely fabulous. And it really does show off the benefit of Evan Stanley being both the writer and the artist, because she really knows how to get across a lot of personality just from a glance. And so, in order to prove the skeptical Jewel a little bit wrong, Amy does a reading for her, and we see the differences that are had by the Mobian tarot cards, or the Sonic World tarot cards, whatever you want to say, as Amy pulls the Master for Jewel, symbolizing strength and leadership, the unifier of chaos, which, kind of hit the nail on the head there for Jewel. Unifying chaos, getting the restoration all together, strength and leadership, misdirector of the restoration. Amy's feeling a little bit smug about that reading, honestly. Tangle, though, questions what happens if we receive a future we're not too happy about. So Amy decides to read Tangle's tarot, and Tangle ends up getting the Chaos Fruit. What about balancing sides, confrontation, a partnership, something to do with a relationship, potentially? And while Tangle, being dense as she isn't quite sure what any of that could mean, it's obvious that Tangle thinks of it more in the sense of something physical and not so much something emotional like, well, her friendship with Jewel and her friendship with Whisper. But it's obvious that Jewel kind of understands where this is coming from. Meanwhile, when Amy eventually gets around to Belle's reading, Amy kind of loses a little bit of her nerve with whatever she saw being less than positive. Also, I gotta take the moment to say, I want a full deck of Amy's tarot cards. Like, I need it. I absolutely would love to have it. Like, put it in with the omnibus or hardback of this storyline, and I'll buy it up in a heartbeat. Give it to me. Give me Amy's tarot cards. I want them. But Belle, she kind of buys into all of this, desperately wanting to see what Amy got. And as Amy and Belle kind of struggle over the card, it ends up falling right into the fire, which leaves Belle feeling honestly even more hopeless than before and in just as bad of a way as initially. And so Amy just kind of gives her a BS reading for the most part, saying that it was the statue's savior about mercy and protection, only for Belle to pick up that card and see that Amy was full of it. Or at least I think that's the card she picked up. But Jewel decides to turn in, feeling some kind of way about today's events, and ultimately most of the girls turn in as well. However, Belle, being, a robot, and also props to Reggie Graham and his coloring. He's been a phenomenal color artist ever since he came onto the book, and I've followed the guy even before he started doing colors on the books. Like, dude is great when it comes to colors. And I will say, I used to think his colors used to be a little oversaturated with his early work, but ever since he came onto the book, geez, he knocks it out of the park every time. And the lighting effect for Belle's eyes. Like, honestly, I would love to see schematics for how Belle works exactly, because it's deeply fascinating. Because she mentions even in this issue that she's made of wood, which she comments on after, she ends up pulling out a lighter in order to start the fire. And it's just like, that's a little bit disconcerting when you're made out of wood. And it's just like, how much of her is made specifically of wood, and what parts of her are cybernetic? There has to be some, or else she wouldn't be able to move under her own power, but, fantasy story and all that good stuff. But Belle sneaks out late at night, and I'm not sure if it was simply that she just, didn't want to just be lingering around as everybody else is able to sleep and she can't because, not organic. Although it does bring forward the question, wouldn't she need a moment to, recharge or go into rest mode, not use up all of her batteries? I would assume she's solar powered because, Mr. Tinker and all that good stuff, so I would think she would need to power down for just a little bit. And I'm not sure if this is her running away or just wanting to lament in the night or what have you, but unfortunately she comes upon a Sonic-shaped bush with a Motobug inside. Which, I mean, yeah, I guess there would just be random Eggman robots just roaming about here and there, because, Eggman. Unfortunately, Belle ends up conked out by the Motobug, and she had her lighter out in order to, see in the dark. And, well, when Amy wakes up, she sees that there is a roaring forest fire out in the woods. And so she and the girls make their way to the central campsite and see that it is chaos and pandemonium left, right, and center, which is only going to make the evacuation even worse. But these are the girls of the Restoration. They know how to handle a crisis, and the first thing they do is go towards the ranger of the park. Unfortunately, his son, who we had seen previously but I didn't really focus on, has a tendency of going out into the woods and just playing around, and he also had a fire wisp with him. So it's hard to tell if this is Belle's fault for starting the fire, which, I mean, if she was at the epicenter, Belle would have gone up like kindling, or if this is the fault of the ranger's son. But Amy comes to him as he would be the best person to talk about how they should go about evacuating everything. And Tangle decides to take on the responsibility of looking for his son so that he can focus on evacuation. As Tangle, well, she's the most agile out of anyone there. If anyone could get in and get out very capably, it would be Tangle. And so Tangle sets out into the burning blaze, with them also noting that Belle is nowhere to be seen, and thus ending our issue. So what's going to happen next? Is Belle going to, well, honestly feel even worse about starting such a massive forest fire, seeing it as her Eggman part being initially destructive and all that? Will she blame the Motobug that knocked her out? Will Tangle and Jules' relationship be okay, or will they continue to drift apart? And what was the reading that Amy got for Belle? How foreboding is that? And I will say I can understand a few people not being too interested in this storyline, as it reads as a bit of an episode of a cartoon, but let's be real, this has to be heading towards something because, I mean, Evan Stanley is current head writer, taking over for Ian Flynn, who has been working on a lot of the side stories and stuff like that. And with issue 50 literally right around the corner, this is leading towards something. Especially because once we get around to issue 47, we'll be going every other month with the main book, and we'll also have Imposter Syndrome, which Ian Flynn has been working on, coming down the pipeline as well, which a lot of people have been looking forward to because of the new characters. So I definitely believe that the whole reasoning behind all of this, especially because Belle has been a running character ever since Evan Stanley has taken over, and the fact that Belle's very existence is what helped Starline create Kitten Surge, who will be the main focus of Imposter Syndrome, we're definitely leading into something relating to those three characters. Hence why Belle has been put so much towards the forefront of things. She's going to be instrumental leading into issue 50. So I have a lot of faith in these people. I've been reading Ian stuff for the longest time. I've been reading Evan Stanley stuff for the longest time. Ghost of the Future and everything. Although I fell a little bit behind over the past few years. Might be time to catch up, but that also might be because she's also been working on the book too. But I have a lot of faith in these writers, what they do, what they plan, and even their least interesting stuff usually ends up being pretty good, all things considered. So I'm definitely on board, but tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. Who started the fire? And How will Belle feel coming out of this if she was the one who started the fire? What was her fortune told? Will Tangle be able to make up with Whisper and Jewel and find a balance in those two relationships? Let me know your thoughts and theories in the comment section below. If you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for notifications. And until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.